Good afternoon and welcome to the regularly scheduled Finance Audit and Budget Committee for July 26th. I'm Commissioner Jeff Rader. I'm the chair of the committee. Unfortunately, I do not have a quorum at this point in time, and so I'm going to rearrange the agenda to provide the opportunity for CFO McNabb to review the financial statements for us, which will not require a vote. And then if a member of the committee arrives before we're complete, then we could make some recommendations on items before us. Ms. McNabb.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryder. I'll share my screen now. And we will start with the general fund.
And just for those that want to follow along, when did you send the reports out?
Quasi and I sent them to Quasi yesterday late, and we have planned we're going to go over them together in detail on Friday.
Okay, so you have not circulated these to the members of the commission?
I'm not sure. I sent him copies that could be today, but I'm not sure they've been circulated yet.
They have been circulated at 2:02 p.m.
Okay. I know that they were late. It was something that we've had the financial statements, but we just haven't had a chance to get with vacations and things like that. We haven't had a chance to get together to go over.
Yes. And let me just remind those that are viewing that we have asked our central staff to work with Ms. McNabb to develop a format for review that will not simply be a uninformed gloss on these particular charts, whereas I think that this is a good format to report the data. What is important is the conclusions that you can derive from this data. The way that we have typically reviewed them in the past is against the 12-month equal allocation of the budget as a indicator of whether or not we're ahead or behind the budget. That may or may not be appropriate in any particular department based upon the profile of their spending, and certainly it is not appropriate for revenues since they come in a very lumpy fashion. The goal is to have the financial statements completed and a conference between central staff and the finance department to identify areas that need a report and further explanation to be able to give the commission a better understanding of financial issues that the county should be watching. And then to have the report of those anomalous or issues of note to be the focus of the presentation in the committee. So what that is going to require first is the development of some sort of a format or a process to analyze the financial statement at a staff level, and then the timely development of the financial statements so that they can undergo that process and bring the information to the commission at a point that we, at our earliest opportunity, if we need to act or seek more information. We note today that we're having the May financials presented, and we're almost at the end of July. So that would also be a hopeful, goal is to get that process completed as quickly as possible after the books are closed on a monthly basis, so that we can timely fill our responsibilities. So
right.
That said,
the new payroll system is taking us a little bit of extra time right now to close. And so, for example, we're closing June this week, finishing up our June close this week.
Okay,
And normally we would have, under the old system, we would have gotten that done a week, probably 2 weeks ago.
sure.
So sort of trying to work all of those kinks and get those, the timing accelerated on that to the extent we can. But so this would be the most recent closed financial period that we have.
All right.
Um,
All right. And I'll turn it over to you at this point.
Okay, and one of the things, we're going to try to develop some metrics or formatting that kind of keys in on the more important issues. For example, total revenues in the general fund are at 25% this year and compared to 25% last year. That's a very important statistic. Then, of course, going back up to taxes, and you can see property taxes at 15 million this year compared to 21 million last year. That's a small difference. It looks like a larger difference, but when you look at the budget as a whole, it amounts to small timing differences. And this is the period during which, as Commissioner Rader said, we don't receive a lot of property taxes. Those come in later in the early fall. And then our e-host, you can see that we're ahead of last year, and we're at 44%. This May, 5 months of the year amounts to 42% of the budget. So we're a little ahead on e-host. Then charges for services, we're a little ahead of last year. Financially, we're 5 million ahead of last year. That's because we've got a larger amount budgeted for the year this time. And I think those were the largest items, and everything was pretty much in line for the general fund revenues. And we'll go to the departmental expenses. Again, we're looking around 42%. You can see here that animal services is just a hair over 42% and fairly comparable to the prior year. Then as we go down, you can see everyone seems to be pretty well below that 42%. I think that happens a lot because we adopt our budget so late compared to our expenditures that I think many departments sort of hold off on what they're going to be able to spend during the year because we don't have a budget to operate with until March. And so that gets us a little bit behind in expenditures, which is never a bad thing. And we go on to the next set of departments. And you can see again, everybody is in this group is well below the 42%.
On the previous page, I saw DFACs being over 50%.
Yes, and that has to do with the timing of the expenditures to DFACs.
Okay.
Then the one thing, and I think I pointed this out in prior months, but I just want to highlight it again. As you can see here in the non-grouped cost centers, last year, and see how that's right at the 42% level.
Mm-hmm.
That was our pension costs and things like that were all grouped into one cost center instead of being spread among the departments. That is now spread among the departments to give a better view of what the total cost of operation in each department is. We'll scroll up a little bit further and you can see again, all of these departments are well below our 42% level. And I will point out in voter registration and elections, you can see that we're at 31% compared to 51% last year. And that's just got to do with the runoff election that was last year, made us incur more costs in that line item in the first half of the year compared to the 31% that we have this year. And then, as you can see, for total expenditures, this year we're at 32% compared to 37% last year. We go on to the next fund, that's the fire fund. You can see our revenues in total are right on track. 6% compared to 7% last year. And charges for services are higher than last year, but the percentage is slightly lower because the budget for this year is a little higher. And so the expenditures for the year for fire are only 29% compared to 38% last year. And again, most of these are timing differences. Special tax district designated services. Taxes are a little behind last year, but again, those numbers fluctuate in the budget from year to year. And so it doesn't mean that they're not comparable at that point. But you can see the total revenues for the designated service district, designated services is 5% for this year and 9% for last year.
Ms. McNabb,
One of the things,
Ms. McNabb, I hate to interrupt you, but I have scared up a quorum. And what I'm thinking that I might want to do is, since Commissioner Cochran-Johnson, who is traveling, is currently online, but will have to go.
I'm happy
in
to
just a second. I'd appreciate
pause
you
this.
standing down for just a moment,
no problem.
and we can do the agenda items.
That sounds great.
Commissioner Cochran-Johnson, thank you for joining us. I know that you're there on iPhone. And what I would like to do is, if we could, go ahead and review our new agenda items, 1845, 1896. And I think that 1837 will not be ripe for action. So we'll focus on those two so we can have recommendations at our next meeting.
Understood.
Thank you. I guess, Ms. Horner, are you ready to present these two agenda items?
I certainly am. Okay, the first one is 2022-1845, and it's change order number 1 to contract number 1092093 for auditing services. It's for use by the Department of Finance. This contract consists of auditing services of the county's financial statements. It's awarded to Malden and Jenkins, LLC, amount not to exceed $29,500. And PNC's recommendation is to approve change order number 1.
All right, and this is for an additional year of auditing, or is this supplemental to the current year?
It is for an additional, Zach, do you want to handle that?
No, I believe these are supplemental services. Diane, can you speak to it?
Sure, I can handle that. This is the cost that the auditors came back and said, due to increasing staffing costs and all of the inflationary costs that have been incurred, that this is the additional cost associated with keeping the contract in place. And also, as we add federal programs, that increases our cost every single year. And we never know for sure until we get the audit started as to exactly what those additional costs are going to, the additional programs are going to be.
Okay. I understand that additional responsibilities or scope would necessitate additional fee, but does our contract provide for adjustments based upon their costs increasing, or isn't there some contractual scope of their cost structure?
Sure. I had that conversation with purchasing, and they explained that this was something that was expected to, that the costs are going up, and I think there were provisions in the contract for that.
So, Ms. Horner, there is some sort of an escalator or an inflationary clause in the contract that allows them to charge more if their expenses rise?
excuse me, in Oracle now.
And what I'm looking at in just the notes to call for it stipulates a 7% billing rates increase effective February 1st, 2022 as a result of inflation and actual increased costs. That's 18,500 of it, and then additional audit review of county ongoing capital asset inventory for 11,000.
Right. I'm not questioning the fact that there's price pressure. I
Right,
just want to
right.
make sure that the contract
Right.
permitted them to recover those costs.
Understood. And Mr. Chair and Ms. Horner, if this isn't something we can readily put our finger on, I don't know how time sensitive this is. Or we could provide the information later, but can you put your fingers on it, Catherine?
I am putting my fingers on it now. I just was a little bit slow getting into Oracle. So I'm going to be taking a look at the cost proposal now.
I'll also mention that this is the last year of the contract and we're in the process of bidding that out again.
It does appear to be a firm fixed contract.
So, Mr. Williams, can you square that with the 18,000 that they're asking for in terms of an inflated cost?
Right. So all I can state is that I believe we can hold them to it based on what Ms. Horner is saying, but there have been instances where, recognizing the increased costs, we have gone on and assumed them. So I don't have a specific opinion one or the other.
Would it make sense for y'all to take a couple of weeks to figure out what of this is consistent with the contract and what is, protected by the.
What is required by the contract?
That's right.
Because, okay, yes, we could absolutely do that. When we look, I don't think we're precluded from bringing this, Commissioner, but we don't have to, from what Catherine just read. But we can absolutely hold it.
Yeah, I mean, if you just, provide us more understanding of why we should, obviously contract's a contract and auditor knows that better than anybody. They probably would give us an exception if we didn't follow a contract with another vendor. And then I have another question about the audit, and that is, we're past the 180 days stipulated for returning our CAFR. Do we have any idea, what we might be able to see that? And is there an issue with Malden and Jenkins that's keeping us from being able to complete that process?
I think that the biggest issue that we have in completing all of this has been the additional federal programs and the additional audit time required to get the information together for all those programs.
Okay, so it's on our side?
I would say it's both. It's the additional audit time that's required to audit all the additional federal programming money.
Right.
And then, of course, we've got all of these grant monies where they're typically concentrated in certain departments. We've got those contracts are all over throughout the county in departments. And so that takes a greater effort to get the departments to pull that information back in for us.
I understand, but this is not, so the delay is on our side of the house, not on Malden's. Is that right?
I would say yes. It's our additional programs and our extensive granting and grant programs that we've implemented in the last 2 years.
Okay. And have you requested and received an extension from the State Department of Revenue for the?
We sure have.
And how long is the extension?
I think the extension's we got the extension through September 30th, but that sure enough better not be how long it takes to get the audit out again. I expect to get it by the end of August.
End of August. Okay. All right, Commissioner Johnston, do you have any questions about this contract? My inclination is to ask for a recommendation for deferral so we can determine how much of many of these costs are, recoverable under the contract.
Okay, you want to do 60 days or 30?
No, I think we could
2
probably do
weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah, 2 weeks would be enough.
All right, I'll make a deferral for 2 weeks.
I'll second that. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
So the recommendation on 1845 is deferral for 2 weeks so that we can understand how much of the costs that they're asking for are recoverable by that. 1896 is renewal. Ms. Horner?
Okay, that is Family Function Therapy, FFT, and Multisystemic Therapy Services. It's an annual contract, second renewal of 2 options to renew. Contract number 1219482 for use by the juvenile court. This contract consists of therapeutic services. It's awarded to evidence-based associates. Amount not to exceed $383,700. And our recommendation is to approve the renewal option through July 31st, 2023.
All right, is there anybody here from juvenile court to speak to it?
And if you are, please use the raise hand feature. Not seeing anything at this time, sir.
All right, it would be great if we did know that the contractor was doing a good job for them and that they want to make this renewal. Were they not invited to the meeting?
They were included on my background summary email.
When does this contract expire?
It expires July 31st.
Right. Yeah.
July 31st.
So it's not going to get renewed in timely anyway, right?
It is not. What we could do is an emergency renewal so that you have time to get all of your questions answered.
Well, I mean, you're going to have an emergency extension anyway because of because it won't be until, August that we are able to take action on it.
That is a very good point, Commissioner Rader. So if you would like to, I will handle that, and then we can proceed in the manner that you see fit, ensuring that all the commissioners have their questions answered.
Okay.
Would a 60-day renewal give you enough time, sir?
I think Colette will be here shortly, Mr. Chair.
Okay, great. That's it.
Okay.
When do we receive notice of the expiration, or do we typically inform them that their contracts require renewal, right?
Purchasing receives the notice starting 6 months out, and every user department receives the same notice.
And we need a response from them in order to put it on the agenda?
Yes, sir. Because they may not want to continue the services,
Right,
or
I
there may
understand.
be other issues.
So is that the reason that we're maybe at least 2 weeks and maybe a month behind on this?
I
Maybe
can't
come back to us.
specifically speak to that issue. What I can tell you is that the renewal form was signed July 6th.
All right. And that was not quick enough, I guess, because that then was after our committee of the whole. So it would have had to have been walked on if it was going to get.
That is correct. And the way the schedule works with agenda items, especially for those that are going to FAB or PECs, it's about a 6-week process to get them through the cycle.
All right.
I believe Ms. Keisha Jones has joined us. I think she might be from there. Is that correct?
Okay. Would you invite Ms. Jones to come forward then? There we go. Hello, Ms. Jones.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Can you shed some light on this juvenile court contract for us?
Could you tell me the name of the contract? I do
Yes, it is
apologize. I'm
the-
actually in training.
Oh, I see. Family Function Therapy, FFT, and Multisystemic Therapy Services for evidence-based associates.
Yes, so we went through the procurement process a couple of years ago in order to secure services for family functional therapy and multisystemic therapy. It is for our most intensive youth who are on probation, and it provides in-home therapy for FFT is actually for 3 to 5 months, and MST is for 4 to 6 months. We are in the process. This is the last year of renewal. The board has previously approved this contract for the last couple of years, and this is our 3rd year of approval. It is also fully funded by a grant that has been approved by the board as well, the Juvenile Incentive Grant.
And you're satisfied with this vendor?
Yes, we are. They've actually been providing services, like I said, since 2020. They provide in-home services, and they have actually added a Spanish-speaking interpreter to also make sure that we have adequate coverage for our Spanish-speaking families as well.
Okay. And you say that you are going to put this out for bid again then in this annual cycle?
The next cycle, yes.
Right. So you'll be starting in the next few months then to get that done. Is that right?
Yes, sir, we will.
Okay, because this is going to expire before the Board of Commissioners can act on it. It expires at the end of July, and we've just had our last meeting for July. So I suppose Ms. Horner may be able to give them some sort of an emergency extension, but we are acting outside of the contract at this point in time.
Well, actually, let me clarify. So this will be the last renewal this upcoming year, and then that will last us until July of next year.
Well, I know
And
that-
then at the end of this year in December, we will begin the process for the following year, which will begin July 2023.
I understand, but without approval of this renewal, it will lapse at the end of this month.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And we won't be able to give you that approval until next month because we've just had our last meeting of this month.
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Horner, you can facilitate the continuity of the contract?
I will be happy to. I believe an extension of 30 days just to cover all bases would be adequate.
All right, well, in any event, I think that we can, if there are no other questions, I think, and.
I have a question.
Yeah, Commissioner Johnson.
Yes, there's a question about the therapy process, not the continuum of care. Are you seeing an increase in services, and how is the program helping the parents of the children? Or are you just dealing with the children that may be in the system?
So no, the whole purpose of family functional therapy and multisystemic therapy is to make sure that we include the entire family. It's not just about the child, because we know that once they go back into that environment of the home environment, the parents also need the services and maybe other children in the home as well. So this therapy is actually put into place to address the whole family unit and not just the child who is on probation.
So how is it connected to the school system? Is the case management system in place?
No, it's not actually connected to the school system. They do, it's primarily through the court. They do also incorporate the home and the school to make sure, in terms of letting the teachers know these are things that we're working on with the family. They may visit the child at the school, but in terms of the school system being involved, they're not from, the therapeutic standpoint. But we want to make sure that it's a holistic approach, and that's why we've selected FFT and MST.
Right, and I just want to see for further, when you get into another extension of this, how we're connecting it to those entities so we can have some continuum of care especially if the child is connected to other programs in the schools, on how we can make sure it's a collective. It helps the parents because they don't get bombarded if we can have a single point of entry that allows the family to enjoy the therapeutic session, as opposed to the schools providing a counselor, you providing a counselor. If they're connected to DFACS got a counselor. You got 3 counselors for one family, but nobody's connected to see how can we this family to that next level of intervention. So that's something I'd like to see, we could talk about in the future.
So one of the things that we love about MST and FFT is it's just one piece of a program that we have, the CAP program. And so within that program, we also have an educational advocate. We have probation officers. And so the team work together to make sure that there's a holistic approach and that we don't have multiple counselors and multiple people coming in. They all work together. They meet once a week so that we can provide a holistic and wraparound approach to this one family and not just have, like you said, we're piecemealing different entities. So the school is going to be aware they have an educational advocate. The school is also going to be aware that the family is in therapy. So they're not putting things in place and duplicating services.
Good. I just want the family to be secure and have a way out because of the increased stress. And I tell people the teachers are already going through a lot, and they have to do, the best education system is the best teacher. And our teachers are going through so much, so they need that extra help. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. And based upon what we've heard, is there a motion on recommending the renewal of this contract?
Yes, sir. I make a motion to renew this contract.
I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so we got 1896 done.
Mr. Chair, if I may, my procurement manager, Phyllis, had just sent me an email. There was extenuating circumstances in the renewal of this. Juvenile court actually was waiting to confirmation of the receipt of their grant funds before committing to a renewal, so that caused the delay.
That's it. All right, well, given that we are recommending renewal, hopefully you can bridge the gap for us. And
we will.
All right.
And we'll submit we can submit a substitute that actually includes that bridge gap.
All right. Mr. Manson, remind me that I should move the substitute. Thank you. All right. Let's see. Since we're doing business now, Commissioner Johnson, we did not have a quorum to start, and so I'd like to move up to 1927, which is our minutes from July 12th. Have you had a chance to take a look at it?
Yes, good sir, and sorry about that. This computer is acting up today. Make a motion to approve the minutes from July 12th, 2022.
I will second that. All in favor, please raise your hand, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, the minutes are approved. Mr. Manson, Dr. Obeng, do we have a report on your work on the debt management policy?
Yes, sir. We're going to be meeting with the finance director this week to kind of just go over some final touches on it. And so hopefully we should have something solid to present at the next FAB meeting.
Okay. And do we have action slated for our next Board of Commissioners meeting?
Not as of yet.
No, but I mean, is it deferred to the Board of Commissioners meeting?
We can do that. I'm presuming that you would want it to come to FAB just one more time before we.
Well, I do. I just am wondering if we need to make a recommendation to defer it for another 2 weeks or whatever.
Yes, sir, please.
Is it 2 weeks that we should defer it?
Well, if we hear it at the next FAB meeting in 2 weeks, then it will be at the BOC in a month. So yes.
30 days.
Yes, 30 days.
Okay, so our FAB would occur after we've deferred it 2 weeks and then we
Right.
would,
Yes, sir.
but would we hear it would we hear it and be able to make a recommendation in 2 weeks from today?
I anticipate that we should, sir.
Okay, so I think that we need a motion for a 2-week deferral, because then when we meet again at our
Then you
next
can
meeting, we'll
vote,
make
yeah.
a recommendation that'll get us there then. So I'd entertain a motion for 2-week deferral.
I make a motion, we defer for 2 weeks.
I'll second that. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, thank you, Ms. McNabb. Let's return now to the finance report or the.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
We stopped at designated services. And again, you can see that the taxes stay right in line, and charges for services are at a higher percentage for this year. And so they're right on track as well. And the combined revenue is down a little bit because of the property taxes. But those will catch up during the year. And then the expenditures are all fairly in line. Parks is a little ahead, Public Works is a little ahead, but again, that's such a small amount. And so much of that is based on the timing of the services provided and when we're able to get the work done. And you can see our expenditures are a little ahead of last year, which I think it primarily means that we're getting the work done.
Okay.
When we scroll on to our unincorporated fund, and you can see that on total revenues, we're at 33% year over year. And the licenses and permits numbers are a little bit down from a percentage standpoint. But again, I think that's a timing issue. Fines and forfeitures are doing a little bit better, but again, that's a small amount of revenue. And then when we look at the expenditures, you can see that we're at less than 32% of total expenditures compared to a little over 28% of total revenues last year. Total expenditures. And those relate to beautification and non-departmental being able to move forward on projects.
Okay.
Move on to the hospital. Hospital stays pretty much the same year over year. 30% of revenues have come in this year compared to almost 30% of revenues last year. And the expenditures are right on track at near that 42% level. So there's nothing unusual in the hospital. Police services for the month, year to date, our revenues are at 5.72% compared to 6.39% for last year. And the primary difference, which is very small, relates specifically to property taxes. And again, that's a minor timing difference there. Then on the expenditures, you can see that debt service is right at our 42% expenditure line item. And non-departmental is in line year over year. And as well as total expenditures, the total police operation expenditures are almost right on the, you can see the total dollar amount has increased, but the budget has increased so that the percentages have stayed the same from from this year to the prior year. And our total expenditures are at 35%.
And these all include the grant expenditures that have been assigned to the department too, is that correct?
No, it does not. Our grant expenditures are charged to our separate grant funds. And the revenues are also reflected in those grant funds.
Okay, continue.
Because they're generally expenditures that don't supplant our existing funds, but rather supplement our programs.
Right.
That's generally what most grants are intended to do. So you would expect to see our operating expenses to continue at the prior levels, even when we receive grant monies. GO bond debt service, this is our old debt service fund. And as we've I've indicated in prior years, these are bonds that have been all paid off. But what's being collected through the millage rate is past due taxes that were billed in the years where the debt service was due. And so as we collect this little bit of extra money every year, we're able to reprogram that. All right, and this is our remaining outstanding GO bond. And you can see that the revenues are very close, only slightly different from one year to the next. And at this point in time, we haven't made any major drawdowns from our debt service funds because those come down on July 1st and January 1st.
Right.
So that represents all of the tax funds.
Okay,
Anybody has any questions? And if not, I'll move on to the enterprise funds.
please do.
So this is the watershed operating fund. You can see that our revenues are up a bit over last year. And our total expenditures percentage has gone down slightly from 35 to 31. Now, you can see that the personnel and benefits is going up, but contracted purchase and contracted services and supplies are down compared to last year's. And if you all remember, these two line items tend to fluctuate during the year. They're one of those expenditures, as you were mentioning, Commissioner Rader, where they're sort of lumpy throughout the year. We don't necessarily spend it on an even 1/12, 1/12, 1/12. And so that will fluctuate up and down, but we would expect to see it more in line by the end of the year. So our total costs are down, total expenses for the water and sewer fund are down to 31% compared to 35% in the prior year. And then, of course, we make all our transfers here, which are for debt service transfers, and they are for renewal and extension fund transfers. So the next fund will be what's remaining of our old 2011 bonds. You can see that those amounts are being expended throughout the year, and we've got those funds down to a balance of 2.8 million. I'll be thrilled to see that balance gone. And then this is our renewal and extension fund, the funds that we have earned, intergovernmental revenue funds, GFund, and funds like that, the state funds that we receive, and federal funds. And then the contracted and purchase services, you can see, as well as the personnel and benefit, are right in line with prior years. Our capital outlay is fortunately going on at a nice higher clip than what we had done in prior years. We spent 55 million last year in capital outlays, and this year we're up to 73 million. Again, picking up our pace of making our improvements related to consent decree, et cetera. Then this is our debt service fund, where we get we transfer the money in when you see this other financing sources here, 27 million. Those are the transfers that come from the water and sewer operating fund in order to pay debt service. And then these are the debt service payments that we've incurred so far this year. Sanitation fund operating. The charges for services are in line year over year, and they are low because so much of our sanitation revenue comes in from taxes, but they're right in line with prior years. And then the expenditures are just in total only just a slightly bit higher than they were last year, but both years below that 42% level. We go on to the capital projects funds where they're making improvements. And we'll be transferring funds in where we show that they're making improvements. So we have a bit of a $1 million negative here. We'll be transferring money in for those capital improvements. The Airport operating fund. They're at 53% of revenue, which would make, they're a little bit ahead of revenue. And of course, theirs are collected off of rents as primarily. And then the expenditures were at 31% of total expenditures this year compared to 35% of total expenditures last year. And things like supplies, that, as I mentioned in the water and sewer operating, those expenditures tend to not be even throughout the year. And so we're still in good shape on our airport operating. Airport capital projects, we have funds to, they've made about $500,000 worth of capital investments this year so far. Stormwater operating, you can see that, of course, the majority of the stormwater revenues are coming from taxes, and those won't come in till later. And then the expenditures are, total expenditures are at 35% compared to 37% last year. And the majority of those relate to personal services and purchased and contracted services. And in stormwater capital projects, we haven't been spent any on the stormwater capital projects at this point. And I think that makes up the enterprise funds. So I'm happy.
Right. And did you mention how much of the tax anticipation note that we've issued for watershed we have drawn down on?
No, I did not have that number. I do know that our total cash balance in watershed right now for our pooled account is about 90 million.
90 million. And so that includes that TAN?
Yes.
Okay. And do we have the means by which we can retire that TAN at the end of the year? I mean,
we will be issuing our new money bonds for our consent decree projects for the end of the year and using that to pay off the tax anticipation note. Revenue anticipation note.
So where are we in the process of preparing to issue that new debt? I know that there were several thresholds. One, obviously, is consolidated annual financial report that you hope to have done by the end of August, I think you said.
Right.
And we also, isn't it true that we also need to demonstrate that we are collecting all of the revenue due to us using enforcement mechanisms such as water cutoffs and that sort of a thing?
And we're in the process of preparing our staff to begin those actual disconnections. As you know, last year, we communicated with our constituents that we would be ending the moratorium. And so we began that process. And in executing that, we reached out to all of the customers that we had become disconnected during the moratorium and had not been paying their bills, about 66,000 customers. And we've been contacting them with direct outreach through letters and through phone calls. And we've been able to re-engage almost all but about 4,000 of those customers. So we're real happy with the level of participation that we've been able to re-engage our customers without having to disconnect their water.
Good.
So right now, we do have people that will be going into disconnection in a couple of months. And what we're doing at this point is restaffing up our field service reps for the water disconnections and, most importantly, the reconnections, because what we found is to the extent we actually begin turning the water off, the folks we want to be able to turn that water back on the minute they come back in and settle their accounts.
Okay.
So our effort is to make a good faith effort to turn that on in less than 24 hours and 48 at the max. But our goal with our hiring and our training is to have the people on hand to be able to turn those water customers back on if they end up getting, most of them will come in and actually pay. But to the extent that they do get cut off, we want to make sure that we have the staff in place and they've been adequately trained on the field service side as well as the customer service operations side so that we can make that as smooth as possible and turn those accounts around as soon as people start paying.
All right. Ms. McNabb, could you provide us, before the next meeting, a report on our past due revenue, and then perhaps in addition to its volume, tell us how much, give us a profile of how it's aged. And
Okay,
then,
sure.
And then the third element would be to divide it between residential and commercial.
Okay.
And when you're looking at residential, I guess we ought to look at, do you consider like an apartment account to be a residential or a commercial account?
Well, what we've begun to do is split out apartments and townhomes into a separate group.
Yeah, okay.
We have
Yeah, if you would just
residential, we
use
have
that.
commercial, and now we have townhomes and apartments.
So it sounds like you have a standard format for that report, and I think it would be useful for the commissioners to see what you're dealing with in terms of, past due bills, so that, because, obviously it's important for us to collect what's due to us so that we can ensure that any bondholders that we're going to collect the money necessary to service their debt.
Sure. I will do that.
Okay, and then I guess a last piece of that puzzle is the financial advisor contract. Where are we with that?
That is hitting the street this week.
Hitting the streets this week, and how long before it closes? 30 days?
Oh, no more than 30 days maximum.
Right, so you
Find a short
expect that-
period to target. It's a small group of firms that offer those services.
Do you
and so-
expect to bring it back to us at what point?
Well, we'll have to go through the evaluation process, and I don't have my calendar in front of me, so I will get the RFP.
August or September, do you think? Well, I guess in September, or will it be October?
Catherine, do you happen to remember about what the timing on that was? I want to say it was the end of September, or the beginning of October.
I'm sorry, Diane, I don't.
Right.
But
Well,
I
if you would
can
report
pull
back,
that. calendar.
yeah, on that schedule to us, obviously, we're very interested in trying to get that process underway.
Us too. All right, Catherine.
Want to run out of money. Commissioner Larry Johnson, do you have any questions?
Mine was on a sheet that I missed, Mr. Chair. I don't know if you want to go through the presentation, but I wanted Ms. McNabb to go back to roads and drainage.
Yes.
at some point. I just want to see if it's, and hope Mr. Williams is on, or when I ask my question. Just want to see where we are year to date,
Rated.
so I can ask my famous question.
Well, I'm sorry. I thought I had to make sure I'm getting in the right spot. Here we go. It's in our special districts fund,
It's down there, right there. Just there you go.
and you can see it's right here. You can see we've had a nice pickup in the amount that we've expended this year, 5 million last year compared to 7 million this year.
Okay, so
And parks have gotten out there, and they're getting a lot of work done as well.
So we on track, you think, what type of surplus you think may happen?
Not in roads and drainage, Commissioner. No.
Okay, because I was just trying to see, so they're doing it. Okay, I was just trying to.
And Commissioner Johnson, anticipate, as we have in the past, or as we did last year, recommendations for additional funding from ARP for certain drainage projects.
Yeah, I'm just focusing a lot on the potholes, seeing if we're going ahead of schedule budget wise, using some additional funds to get contractors in to help them get these potholes filled until we get the road paved.
Yeah,
the other one is, have we ordered any additional street sweepers?
We've not.
So do we have we got excess funds to do at least one or two, or lease them at least?
Let me go back and check, because we have 3 under contract, and I think we run them through beautification, through Tracy's shop. But I'll get you, the details on that.
Yeah,
but we don't own any. We
right. I was trying to see, can you bring us back a price to do at least 3 more?
Sure.
I know
to
you
essentially
got
double the contract. Absolutely.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, because you got one for North, Central, and South.
Yeah,
and
actually.
By the time they finish what they're doing, they never really. You can only do it one time, and we need to do it more than just once for what we're doing. Because now we got more people on the street. You got more people walking. It's just a lot of things going on, and it just requires more cleanup than we've done in the past. So, if you can look at least doubling that and bring it back to
I was actually behind one a couple of days ago. First time I'd been behind one of them.
Well, I hadn't seen one yet, so you must be doing it at night.
Well, yeah, no, that I don't want to say I hadn't seen one, but I don't think I'd seen one either. So
now I just like to see.
Big county.
Yeah, it's a big county. That's why I know 3 may not be enough. But I've seen signs in other cities saying, "Please don't park here." The sweepers coming and all of that. So I just want to see. I know in the city you see more of those because we still park in our garages or off the street. But if you can bring us something back for the budget, or at least do having at least 3 additional trucks. But I know you just would triple.
We'll absolutely. We'll bring that discussion through PWI.
Okay, that'll be fine.
Commissioner Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a question about, I was reading that the city of Tucker is considering, or I guess they're going to put on the ballot, a referendum to take over stormwater. So I'm just curious, do we know kind of an estimate if they, are out of our stormwater fund, how that will impact next year's revenues?
Yeah.
I think that is TJ.
Right. I think that's going to require a specific conversation, and TJ can bring that.
Yeah, just later on is fine.
And it's really, I would love to share some thoughts on that. And I understand they may be having a similar discussion in Stonecrest. Okay. But we'll be happy to bring it back or have a separate meeting with you, Commissioner Terry. Maybe just a briefing would be good to let you look at some of the things that we're looking at.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions of Ms. McNabb?
No, sir. Thank you, Mr. McNabb. Great presentation.
And we'll look forward to you working with staff to develop that, review format so that we just bring sort of the highlights.
Yeah, we're hoping to get more, the stats, the boiled down data.
All right, sounds good. All right, is there any other business become before us? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.